much for coming out and supporting us. Andy, where did Andy? There's Andy right there. Thank you for your support, and of course I want to thank my good friend Mike DeWine, who stepped forward yesterday and did a courageous thing, and I think offered some wisdom on many fronts as to the dynamics of this race. The dynamics of this race is right now, I think, the more you look at the candidates, I'm trying to think, it was Morton Blackwell who said, the more you look at Rick Santorum, the better he gets. I'm not too sure that's true for the other candidates in this race. I appreciate Mike's steadfast support, and Mike points out another different thing, which I think is important, because if you look at who's the best person to take on and defeat Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Whoever is the nominee of the Republican Party is going to be in a tough race. They're going to be outspent. And maybe outspent badly. I mean, the president's talking that he's going to have $1 billion to be able to spend. And of course, he's not spending any money in a primary. He's husbanding every dollar he has. So whoever the Republican primary winner is going to be, the nominee, he's going to probably be outspent. Which means he's going to have to run a campaign with less money, without the national media being on his side and advocating for him and talking about his inevitability all the time. He's going to have someone who's going to be smarter, leaner, faster, quicker, and have the issues that rally people, have the character to rally those to his side, to create energy and enthusiasm in the ranks. Well, if you look at the primary race, who hasn't had the money? Who hasn't had the national media? So when Mike said, he said Rick Santorum is the best person to defeat Barack Obama in the general election, I happen to agree with that. We're going to win. We're going to win because we have the issues on our side. We have the issues on our side, and that Barack Obama's tenure as president has done more to undermine the national security of our country.
That's right.
To make us weaker and less secure. He's done more to undermine our economy, undermine our freedoms. Destroy jobs, raise the price of energy. The price of fuel right now, they're talking maybe by the summer we're looking at $5 a gallon. Why? Why? Because this president systematically is doing everything he can to raise the price of energy in this country.
That's right.
He's shutting down all sorts of opportunities for us to drill for oil. He's now trying to infuse not science when it comes to the environment, not environmental science, when it comes to drilling wells for oil and gas in Pennsylvania and North Dakota and other places that use hydraulic fracking. He's trying to do again what he tried to do with global warming. Instead of using climate science or global science, he uses political science. And political science in this case is suggesting that a technology that has been successfully used to drill hundreds of thousands of wells in this country, hundreds of thousands of oil and gas wells, all of a sudden now that's a dangerous technology. Why? Because it can lead to lower energy prices.
That's right.
That's the dangerousness of this technology. It doesn't fit his pattern of trying to drive down consumption, trying to drive up your cost of transportation to accomplish his political science goal of reducing carbon dioxide emissions. This is what the president's agenda is. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about your quality of life. It's not about your jobs. It's about some phony ideal, some phony theology. Oh, not a theology based on the Bible, a different theology. 5 years, Mexico was going to go from exporting 1.5 million barrels of oil a day to the United States to being a net importer of oil. He knows that Venezuela, which now sends 2.5 million barrels of crude a day to the United States, has a refinery being built in Venezuela. A refinery being built by the Chinese, who are going to take that oil and send it to China, not to the United States. And he knows that the North Slope of Alaska, which used to produce 2 million barrels of oil a day, now is down to 500,000, and in a few years is going to be to a point where there's not going to be enough oil to put in the pipeline so the pipeline will flow anymore. And we will lose all that production. 4 to 5 million barrels a day of crude that was coming into this country is now going to be lost. And we have an opportunity with Canada with oil sands and North Dakota, the Bakken with oil shale to replace most of that crude oil. And in the face of this stark evidence, what does the President decide to do? Not build the Keystone Pipeline that would send that oil to this country. Millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, all sorts of opportunities for us to be more energy independent. And what does he say? No, Canada, you build the pipeline to the West Coast and send that oil to China. No. This President is not on your side.
No.
This President is not for jobs.
No.
He's not for a quality of life that's increasing in America.
No.
If you look at energy consumption and look at quality of life in any country in the world, the lower the energy consumption, the higher the price of energy, the lower the standard of living. Yeah. President Obama got elected in large part because of the recession of 2008. That, remember, drove oil prices in the summer of 2008, led to the crash of the housing market. And here we are again. I think President Obama is trying to take his game plan out of the game plan of another ultra-liberal Democrat, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that is, if the economy continues to get worse and the government promises you more, people who are dependent upon that government will vote for the government to keep their paycheck.
That's right.
Yeah.
For more dependency is how the President looks at this economic opportunity. Economic opportunity for higher unemployment, economic opportunity for higher gas prices, economic opportunity for lower growth rates. That's the economic opportunity for government to grow and for you to depend more on him. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the opportunity that I'm looking for in America. That's not the opportunity that America. We don't believe in dependency, we believe in freedom and opportunity. That's how I put a game plan together that does the dual work. Actually, I'll say 3 levers. 3 levers that are vitally important to get this country turned around. Number 1. This country is suffocating in a mountain of debt, and we have to reduce it. I put a plan out there that says I will cut spending $5 trillion over 5 years, balance the budget in 5 years, and in every single year, under Rick Santorum's administration, we will spend less money the next year than we did the year before for 4 straight years. Some in this race have said Rick Santorum isn't a fiscal conservative. Very interesting that the Citizens Against Government Waste, a taxpayer watchdog group, has rated me a taxpayer hero over the course of my career. The National Taxpayers Union has given me an A in almost all of the years that I was in Congress. And the Weekly Standard this week did an evaluation of my fiscal conservative record and said, given the state I represented, I was the most conservative, strongest fiscal conservative in the 12 years that I was in the United States Senate. That tells you that all of these scurrilous attacks, Mitt Romney saying, oh, well, Rick Santorum voted for earmarks and promoted earmarks. What they doesn't tell you is that one of Mitt Romney's greatest accomplishments, one of the things he talks about the most, is how he heroically showed up on the scene and bailed out and resolved the problems of the Salt Lake City Olympic Games. He heroically bailed out the Salt Lake City Olympic Games by heroically going to Congress and asking them for tens of millions of dollars to bail out the Salt Lake Olympic Games. In an earmark for the Salt Lake Olympic Games, one of his strongest supporters, John McCain, called it potentially the worst boondoggle in earmark history. And now Governor Romney suggesting, oh, Rick Santorum earmark, as he requested almost $500 million in earmarks as governor of Massachusetts to his federal congressmen and senators. Does the word hypocrisy come to mind? Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the real issues of the day. Let's talk about what we're going to do to reduce this budget deficit. Let's talk about where the problem is when it comes to the budget deficit. And unlike some in this race who would suggest that it's defense spending, at the time, at the year of my birth, defense spending in 1958 was over 60% of the federal budget. It is now 17% of the federal budget. Does anyone think that defense spending is the problem that's leading to bigger deficits? No. When I was born, less than 10% of the federal budget was paid to entitlement programs. Now 60% of the federal government is entitlement programs. How many think entitlement programs is the problem? Earmarks were abused, and I too, along with others who earmarked, like Jim DeMint, called for their being stopped. But earmarks are less than 1% of the budget. And some of the earmarks, particularly in defense, were vital, like earmarks for the V-22 Osprey, the most capable plane that our Marines have. A plane that's a helicopter and a plane. That Dick Cheney, as Defense Secretary under the first George Bush administration, was going to end that program, but for an earmark, it would not be here today. So let's not just condemn all. There was abuse, and we stopped it. But the idea that every earmark is a bad one is simply false. What is bad is Congress continuing to promise generations of Americans for their votes entitlement programs that we can't afford, and there's been one person, not just in this race, but there was one person in Congress when I was there who took on entitlement programs, welfare reform, food stamps, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of those programs. I provided leadership in trying to reduce the shortfall in all of those programs so they would not grow and grow to consume the entire budget. And by the way, that's not an easy thing to do. I represented a state which is even a little tougher to win as a Republican than Ohio is. And I represented a state with the second oldest per capita population of seniors. And why is that important? Well, if you look at the big three programs, of that 60%, 40% is three programs: Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. All those three programs have something in common. The money in those three programs is predominantly spent on seniors. Everybody knows Social Security and Medicare, but Medicaid, people think of as a program for women and children in poverty. It is. But the vast majority of the money in Medicaid is spent on seniors in nursing homes. So who was willing to go out and take on those three programs, representing the second oldest per capita population of seniors in the country, in a state that leans decidedly Democrat, and vote with a conservative rating in the Senate of 90%, as according to the American Conservative? Who took on those programs? With seniors being the second highest per capita. By the way, the first is Florida. They have the highest per capita population of seniors. But Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid mean more to my seniors than the Florida seniors. Why? Because all my rich seniors moved to Florida. Like they do here in Ohio. Valued those programs. You want courage? You want someone who's going to go out and fight the tough fights? We did. And I'm doing it today. Paul Ryan's budget's great, but it doesn't do enough fast enough. His ideas are great, but they need to be implemented sooner. We are on the verge of bankruptcy, folks.
That's right.
We need to do something now, and we can't wait 10 years.
That's right.
And I know Paul Ryan would love to include this. We can't exclude Social Security. Paul Ryan's budget, you may know, does not even mention Social Security. Social Security is running almost a $200 billion deficit this year, in part because they cut the payroll tax that doesn't fund Social Security anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we need to step forward and tell the American public what the severity of the problem is. Americans understand that it is everybody's responsibility as Americans, just like it is with your family. When you inherited whatever you did from your parents, and I'm not talking money, I'm talking about the family's honor. You took that honor and you have an unspoken pledge to pass on to your children something greater, something better than you were given. And the same is true with America. Every generation's goal, every generation's cause is to make America a stronger country than you were given. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we all are here. The Tea Party is here because we know that that is in jeopardy. Some believe that it's too late. In America, with Americans, it's never too late. But it will take Americans, not imperious, snobbish, elitist leaders telling us how to run our lives. It will take a leader that trusts America, that trusts average Americans to do their duty, to embrace the obligation that I talked about earlier to leave this country better. I don't know of anybody in America that doesn't want that and is willing to do their duty. They just need to be informed as to what their duty is, what the challenges are, and what the opportunities, yes, challenges, but opportunities to make sure that that happens. Let's look at these senior programs of Medicare and Social Security. I would say all the other entitlement programs, frankly have no business being federal programs. They should be cut, block granted, and sent back to us. We did that, by the way. Mike DeWine and I did that with welfare reform. We cut it, capped it, froze it, cut back all of the strings and regulations, said to the states, you have the flexibility to design a program not to keep people on government dependency with welfare, but to transition them off by having a work requirement they find them. This for welfare, and we're not proposing it for food stamps and Medicaid and the rest because we just want to cut government. Because we don't care about people who have relied or become dependent upon those programs. We're doing it because we do care about the people who have become dependent. Guess what happened with welfare reform? Yes, we saved money. Yes, the welfare rolls were cut in half across the country on average, and in places like Wisconsin, 92%. But if that's all that happened, I'm not sure I would be supportive. Because if what happened was more people were thrown into poverty, there was more despair, there was more crime, there was more family dissolution, but actually the opposite happened. Poverty rates went to the lowest rate ever in the history of the country for many great groups that were chronically poor in America. The most hard to employ in America, never married mothers, went from 40% of employment up to 62%. And amazing. That number had been around 40% for almost 40 years, never changed. And it went up 50%. Why? Because we believed in the dignity and worth of every person, their ability to rise in society. Yes, we should do that with the rest of the entitlement programs, but it leaves the big two, Social Security and Medicare. Let's just be honest. The President of the United States, when it comes to Medicare, has a very clear message for you. He does not trust you to be free. That's the bottom line. How many people here would like to have the same health insurance plan as members of Congress? Let me tell you what members of Congress plan is. Members of Congress plan has the federal government paying a certain amount of money to every employee of the federal government, including members of Congress. They give you a little booklet. If you live in Washington, D.C., it's a big booklet. But across the country, they give you a little booklet if you're a federal employee. You can choose from different health care plans. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive. You get to choose the benefits, the network of providers. You get to choose all of the deductibles, co-pays, and you make the decision what you want to pay for. The government will pay for so much. If you want something more expensive, you pay more. If you want something less expensive, you may not pay anything at all. In the case of Medicare, what they're going to do is copy that system. And for lower income seniors, give them a little higher benefit. For higher income seniors, a little lower benefit. All will be able to go out in the marketplace and choose the plan that's best for them. According to the President of the United States, that is, quote, throwing grandma off a cliff. Why? Why? Because the President does not believe you are capable of freedom.
Right.
He believes the only real way for you to get Medicare is for him to decide what plan you will get, what doctors you will see, what hospitals will be available, what we will pay those doctors, what you will pay. A one-size-fits-all government-run program. That is the President's model. He's in charge, you listen. I believe Americans are better than that.
That's right.
And Social Security. from Social Security of spending, and it's going to get hundreds of billions of dollars more. It's going to be huge as time goes on. Why? Because the baby boomers are retiring. We fall off the demographic cliff with 200,000 to 300,000 people during the 90s and the early part of this last decade hitting retirement age of 65. It's now over 1 million every year. It's an explosion of cost for Medicare and Social Security. Well, let's look at the situation of Social Security today versus when it was put into effect in 1937. The retirement age, eligibility age in 1937 was set at 65. Life expectancy in 1937 was 61. Social Security was put in place for the very old, those who were incapable of working. Why? Because of poverty. The poverty rate among seniors with respect to their income was almost 70% in 1937. As far as wealth was concerned, by age, the poorest group of people as far as wealth were people over the age of 65. Now let's look at the situation today. Life expectancy is not 61, it is 80. And the eligibility age eligibility age has gone up to 66, and it's on its way to 67. Poverty rates of America as far as income by age group, the lowest poverty rates of any age group, people over 65, 9%. Wealth accumulation. Who has the most wealth by age in America? People over 65. Good for you. And it is good for you.
That's right.
And so now we look at the situation and say, by the way, what age do most seniors take Social Security? 62. How many people in this room believe that someone who's age 62 is too old to work? Yet, we know that's true because most 62-year-olds that receive Social Security do work. And Social Security is there to supplement their income. Is that what Social Security was there to do? Some have suggested, well, we just need to increase taxes so we can shift more money. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know there's 60,000 people in America today who earned last year who earned people over 65 who earned more than $1 million a year who are receiving Social Security benefits. And we're borrowing every dollar of that from China to pay those benefits. Folks, if you know the facts, it's pretty easy to figure out some of the things we can do to solve the problems. How onerous would it be on a 61-year-old to say that next year you can't take early retirement at 62, you can take it early eligibility at 62, you can take it at 62 and 1 month. How onerous would that be? Not at all. Yet it would save money and help save the Social Security system. How onerous would it be that people who are 60 would take it at 62 and 2 months? These are the things, little things, that are not going to have a huge impact, or frankly, any impact to speak of on people in America today. But yet, we'll begin the process of solving the Social Security problem. How many would say to those who are earning those $1 million that maybe you shouldn't get your cost of living increase this year? There are things that we can do, that we can form consensus on. Anybody have a problem with either one of those things? No. But you're not being talked to as adults. You're being treated as mindless, flyover country rubes who don't need to know the truth. They're being treated with deception, with class warfare, instead of talking about the truth. It goes back to that old line in Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise saying, "You can't handle the truth." You can handle the truth. You can make America better if you know the truth. need to grow this economy. I've put forward a plan that the Wall Street Journal referred to as supply-side economics for the working man. Because we do cut taxes. We cut taxes to 2 rates, 10 and 28%, have 5 deductions: children, charities, pensions, healthcare, and housing. All things to support the family in America, which is vitally important. To support churches and nonprofit institutions in America, which is vitally important if we're going to have a strong and stable country in America. We take the corporate tax, 35%, and by April 1 it will be the highest in the world. Japan's cutting theirs, we're not cutting ours. But if Rick Santorum is elected, we'll cut the corporate tax from 35% to a flat tax at 17.5%. So big corporations will pay the same rate on their profits as little corporations. We will level the playing field, make it simpler, make it easier to comply, make it more predictable so people can understand the risk that when they put their money on the line. That will spur growth and investment across America. And then for manufacturing that used to be 21% of the workforce in America. When I grew up in a small steel town north of Pittsburgh. Thank you. And now it's 9%. And with it went the opportunity for average Americans, blue-collar workers, to be able to get the jobs, to be able to rise in society, in that employment opportunity, but up to form and up the line, by showing your skills and your hard work. That's what's missing in America. That's why so many people feel they're out there paddling alone, that nobody cares about them, because all Obama wants to do is give you food stamps, and all Republicans talk about are tax cuts for folks that don't include them. We need to have a plan that says we want to put you back to work by creating the opportunity for manufacturing jobs to flood back into America. So we take the corporate rate and eliminate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important election in your lifetime.
Yes.
Yes, it's the financial stability of our country. Yes, it's about jobs and economic opportunities. Yes, and it's about the rebuilding of the American family and strong communities in our country. But ultimately, it's about one thing. It's about freedom.
Amen.
The Party did a great job in going out and talking and educating and revitalizing this incredible and important document called the U.S. Constitution. But Tea-Partiers know also that while the Constitution is the operator's manual of America, how we are supposed to govern ourselves, the why of America, who we are, is in a different document. Amen. That is also printed with the Declaration of Independence for a reason. Amen. Because the Constitution without the Declaration can in fact be a very dangerous document. As we saw in other countries that have adopted similar constitutions without the foundational principle in the Declaration, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator. without the Declaration leaves open and in fact invites men and women to be the creator and the decider of rights. As we saw with this president who dismisses routinely the Declaration and believes that government is the provider of rights like Obamacare. And we saw when government provides rights, they can coerce you on how to exercise those rights against your will and against your faith and against your conscience. Ladies and gentlemen, foundational freedoms are at stake. A country that believes in God-given rights and free people building a great and just society from the bottom up, based on free people, free enterprise, and the opportunity to form families, churches, civic and community organizations, schools, all around you, the network, those civil institutions, civic institutions, those mediating institutions that Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about in Democracy in America, that makes America unique in the world. All of these little groups that form a buffer and a support structure around you, the individual. First the family, then the church. Then all of these civic and community organizations like Tea Party groups, where you can go to protect your freedoms.
That's right.
Barack Obama wants to wipe clear the slate.
Oh, yes.
Yes, he does.
As president, he proposed eliminating charitable deductions for these types of organizations, for certain people. He is now systematically going after these organizations, forcing them to transform themselves into arms of the government and what the government says that they should do. Using the 501c3 status to threaten that. This is what the President's vision is of America. A naked public square where there's nobody and nothing between you and the government. And so when problems happen, there's only one place for you to go.
Not on my watch.
That's right.
You here in Ohio, you here in Ohio have a huge opportunity, and of course you know you have a huge responsibility. You are that swing state in the general election.
We love you, Rick.
But you've got a little work to do before November comes around. You've got an opportunity in this race, as the biggest prize on Super Tuesday, to speak loudly and clearly about the message and the messenger you want to go into the fall election. Someone who shares the values, not just your values, but the values that made this country, that shining city on the hill. The values that is the beacon of hope for the world. The values that still have people standing in embassies around the world hoping and praying that they can come to this country.
That's right.
Not to have the government take care of them. They're leaving countries because they don't want the government to take care of them.
Right.
You have an opportunity here in Ohio to put forth a candidate who will present that clear contrast of visions, who isn't burdened down by, well, let's say a lot of imprudent decisions that were made in their political past, but someone who can clearly go after President Obama on every one of the issues I talked about today and strike a blow for freedom.
Yes.
To remind America who we are, what we can be. We can be great, greater, and hand off something truly special for the next generation. We can be called in very different terms. The greatest generation because we came back from the brink of socialism, the brink
Yes.
of loss of our freedom. And in this election, we turned this country around. We'll be joining